I wanted to talk a little bit about how this classification of sensory experience that I like to use relates to some of the more traditional Buddhist categories. In early Buddhism, sensory experience was classified into what was known as the six consciousnesses. Here the word consciousness is vijnana in Sanskrit, or vijnana in Pali. So the traditional six consciousnesses are hearing, seeing, smelling, tasting, body sensation, and thinking. What I've done is we have here sound and sight, so that's the external hearing and the external seeing. I've broken thinking as a sensory experience into two components: the auditory thinking, talk, and visual thinking, image. And the reason for that is that if we ask people to observe their thinking, this is very intangible. How do you observe the thinking process? In order to make it tangible and sensory, it's very helpful to ascribe qualitative and spatial tangibility to thinking. So here's what I mean by qualitative tangibility. There's an auditory quality to thinking in words and so forth. You can sort of hear it. So it has a sensory quality of auditory. There's a visual quality to thinking in pictures. So it has a sensory quality of visual. So that makes thought qualitatively tangible. Also, the talk tends to be located in the head at the ears, and images tend to center in front of, behind the eyes, although they can occur elsewhere. If your eyes are closed, images of your surroundings will tend to be projected out around into the ambiance. Images of your own body tend to be where the body is. So if we take the sort of mental screen in front of, behind your eyes, and also include the locations of around you and back on the body, this gives a spatial position to visual thinking and makes visual thinking spatially tangible, localizable. So that allows us to track the thinking process in terms of sensory whats and spatial wheres, locations in space, as it unfolds moment by moment in real time. This allows us to make the surface of mental experience quite tangible and observable. We'll talk about the depths later on. I break body experience into the emotional type body sensations and then everything else. The emotional ones I call feel, and then everything else I call touch. The reason for this feel category is that when a person has emotional experience, and we're constantly having emotional experience, it's important to be aware that there will often be a somatic component, a body component. A lot of times we tend to conceive of emotion as mental only. Certainly it is the case that emotional experiences can have a mental component of image and talk, but it's important to be able to detect the body component, especially when the body component is subtle, because subtle is significant. Very wispy, subtle, emotionally colored body sensations can have an enormous effect, distorting effect on people's perception and behavior. So I needed to have a word that meant body sensation that's emotional in nature, so I call that feel. And then everything else, which is most of what's in the body most of the time, is touch. So I further subdivide the traditional Buddhist category of body into a sort of affective component, and then the more physical type sensations. and I subdivide the traditional category of mind into image, talk. And then for simplicity's sake, I consider smell and taste to be a form of physical body sensation. That allows us to have this nice symmetrical system. Now, a person might say, well, I can sort of appreciate that the surface of the mind is talk and image, but what about the depths of the mind? Well, it turns out that as you become intimate with talk space and learn how to find that space and listen to it, and likewise image space, when the surface conscious talk and image sort of goes away, you become aware of subtle undercurrents of processing that are going on, a kind of vibratory matrix out of which conscious talk and image arise. And that's the subconscious. Those are the depths. And those circuits are, the phrase I use is massively parallel and fleeting in their processing. So massively parallel means they're processing a whole bunch of stuff at once. And it's very fine, very subtle, and very fleeting. It just disappears very quickly. It's actually a kind of vibratory energy. By looking at the surface for a while, you can then develop a sensitivity for monitoring in real time the general level of activation of the subconscious mind. So this system allows us a way to not merely work with surface thought, but actually directly in real time eyeball the subconscious mind. So that's sort of how the 6 basic sensory spaces that I work with relate to the traditional Buddhist category of the 6 consciousnesses.